matters, and before moving to the agenda of the day, let me give you a brief of the topic. It is well known fact that campus recruitment plays an integral role in a company's recruitment strategy. This is especially true when it comes to tech recruitment. There are over 1.5 million engineers graduating in India every year, and companies are desperately competing with each other in order to attract and hire the best talent. The question for long was, how do we ensure we get the best talent? At Hackerrank, they have unpacked this question to find out critical factors that are necessary for companies to reflect on. Talking points are how to re-engineer tech recruiting on campus, the right tools to maximize campus hiring efficiency and increase quality of hires, the right and wrong approaches to tech hiring, campus hiring in the era of millennials, saving engineering time during campus drives, enhancing candidate experience. Let me now introduce the speaker for this webinar we have the privilege of having with us. Prasad Rao, Head Talent Selection India at Adobe. Prasad, with 30 plus years of executive search and recruiting experience, is currently managing leadership, niche research labs, and university hiring for Adobe in India. He has successfully built scalable talent strategies, recruiting teams, infrastructure, and processes globally that ensure an integrated strategy for attracting, recruiting, and hiring key talent. Prasad is responsible for hiring across all verticals: R&D, leadership hiring, IT sales and marketing, field operation, corporation functions, and global services, including university relations, employment branding, talent operations, and contingent workforce solutions. Also, we have with us Mr. Rakesh, Director of Sales, India and APAC, Hackerrank. Our partner for today's webinar is Hackerrank. Hackerrank is a technical talent community for developers to hone their skills and for companies to hire best tech talent. With 2.4 million plus developers, 40 plus languages, 10 plus programming domains, Hackerrank is giving companies recruiting tools such as code prints and code challenges that make sourcing, screening, and interviewing effective. 2,000 plus companies are revolutionizing tech recruiting with Hackerrank. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those watching live webinar, you can submit questions at any time during the presentation through the Q&A section. We will try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We have an exciting topic to discuss in this webinar today, so without any further delay, let me now invite Mr. Prasad to take over. Over to you, Mr. Prasad.
Thank you, Saloni. Thanks for the introduction. And also thank you, Hackerrank, for providing me this opportunity to share my insights and experiences in the university hiring space. More than anything, I think it's a privilege for me to be, sharing this platform with, many others who are attending this webinar and running university hiring program for the respective organizations. I would like to use this opportunity to not just share my insights, but also hear from the audience on their experiences, on some of the best practices that they have, built for their organization, which others can actually, replicate in their organizations with some customization. So let me now jump on to the topic for the day, which is an overview of the India campus recruitment. While Saloni has outlined the high-level agenda of what we would like to cover today, but in principle, what I would like to do today is to share some insights on how do we re-engineer some of these strategies to help hire the tech talent. As you know, the industry is evolving, the world is evolving. You see a lot of new technologies, a lot of new organizations coming into play, and pretty much everybody come in with their own set of practices and philosophies. And the need of the hour is how innovative each of us can be. Now, for example, Adobe has been visiting campuses for last 20 years. And even today, we cannot take our position at the campuses for granted. until we reach a few weeks before the recruiting day, we are not sure of our day status at the campus. And we have to constantly innovate. We have to continuously start inventing new programs on building a better engagement with the campuses. So let's kind of look at some of these things on what we can do differently and how each of us can actually make a pitch for our own organization. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. I will be looking at the chat window here, but if you want to wait for me to complete this session, I'm absolutely fine with it as well. Before we get to the agenda, let me first discuss about spend some time on the need for campus hiring. As that's probably a very lame question, but if you actually go deeper, you will understand there's a lot more strategic aspect to be invested in campus hiring than just finding talent at a cheaper cost. As I said, this space has evolved significantly over time. Earlier it could have been a case of, finding talent, finding easy talent in one single platform. But if you have evolved, and this has evolved over time, where there are the various parameters that I would like to call out on the need for campus hiring. Yeah. So as I said, I have identified a few parameters. I'm sure a lot of you would actually resonate with these ideas as well. One of the biggest, aspects that really benefits an organization is the diversity aspect of hiring new college grads. These are the individuals who create an inclusive work environment. They also provide or bridge a gap between gender, geography, and ideas. The other parameter that actually, we came up with recently was the culture complement part. Now, this is a very interesting concept. Earlier, we used to hire people who are a culture fit, and these days, many organizations not just look for a culture fit, but also look for individuals who can complement the current culture. For example, how do we get individuals who challenge the status quo and foster innovation in an organization? And who better than new college grads who always come up with a very different perspective to what we do things every day. A lot of folks with experience are stereotyped to doing things in a certain way, primarily because of the experience or because of the nature of work they are into for the last many years. Bringing in a fresh talent or a fresh campus grad always provides that innovative mindset to what we do on a day-to-day basis. Of course, there is a cost and time efficiency. You get to hire the brightest of the talent in a country by visiting a bunch of schools, and that pretty much takes care of 10 to 15% of your annual hiring target. The other aspect that also creates a need for campus hiring is creating a talent pool or creating a user base for a product in a specific organization. Imagine you being an influencer to a large population of probably a million new college grads in India who could be the future user base for your products. And that's where you actually tap into the talent pool early on and create more influencers and create more of a passive brand for your own organization as they step into the industry. So what I have over the next three slides, I would like to share some data to set the context on the need for us to re-engineer hiring at campuses. This data is provided by a market research company called Zeno. And as you can see here, there are a lot of stats here, but what I would want the audience to be looking at is look at what it was early on. Some of those statistics are blurred, maybe because of the size of the screen. But if you actually look at the initial phase, there were probably around 8 to 10 MNCs or R&D centers in India. And this has grown significantly, and now today there are close to 1,000 such entities in India, all vying for a similar talent pool at the universities. But what is interesting is the spike in growth from, let's say, 2008 onwards, which has grown exponentially in this space, and this continues to grow. And for example, Adobe, we've been here for 20 years, and pretty much every product that Adobe has launched to our customers, we have a fair share of our footprints on these products. We are the largest after the headquarters. So that actually indicates the rationale in setting up this MNCs and R&D has also changed over time. Initially, you had these MNCs setting up shop in India as a cost-effective model, but over time, if you look at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Adobe, Intuit, we play a strategically very important role and not just as a cost-effective model for these organizations. A lot of newer innovations, a lot of new products, India has a fair share of its footprints. And that actually makes it all the more important for us to go aggressively after the new college grads, which provides us a very good pool of bright talent. This data is also provided by Zeno. I'm quoting the data that has been provided by Zeno. So what you can see here is they have given us a snapshot of the number of new college grads who graduate every year from the approved colleges in India. There are close to 1 million engineers or undergrad or postgrad students who graduate who are eligible for interviews with IT organizations in India. And what really translates to in terms of relevant talent is around 10% of that, which is roughly around 100,000 students, or actually less than 100,000. And if you actually drill it further, a lot of organizations today may not hire from metallurgy or from civil engineering or biotech or chemical. And as I can expect, a lot of these entities are IT organizations. So the talent pool will actually get much more smaller if you filter down to a few departments in these schools. So as per the data, there are roughly around 20,000 relevant candidates that these 600 or 1,000 R&Ds can hire from every year for their new college grad talent pool. This is a snapshot of where you actually find this talent pool. As you can see, majority of the talent pool, graduate out of schools in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities, which also relates to the reason why we have a large chunk of IT organizations centered around this tier 1 and tier 2 cities. I think using this as a context, let me now move on to the next phase of the topic, which is about re-engineering hiring tech talent at the campuses. The core agenda of this webinar is about re-engineering tech recruiting at campuses. As I have already set the context in terms of the talent pool available, which I'm talking about in the range of 20,000, it becomes all the more important for these organizations to continuously re-engineer the way we are hiring talent for technology roles. Some of the aspects that I would like to call out are the long-term vision. We need to invest in universities for a strong pipeline in the future, because a lot of these talent translate to your senior talent down the line, and it's very important for us to have a long-term vision and not have a stopgap arrangement of visiting the campuses. You may not have an immediate need to hire every year, but it's important for us, for every one of us, to continuously visit these campuses year on year to build a pipeline for the future. We are also talking about a dedicated strategy. What it means is many organizations might have some of the staffing organization double up as university talent partners. This minimizes the opportunity for us to be innovative when we are looking at re-engineering our approach. So we need to have a dedicated set of individuals who are not just focused on hiring, but who are continuously coming up with strategies to reinvent programs when at these campuses. And the next big factor that has been a ripple effect in the industry today is technology. I can remember not so long ago, probably in 2008, when I was at Google running university programs. I remember traveling to campuses with a pile of question papers with a bunch of folks, at least 2 or 3 engineers who would go a few months ahead of the recruitment day and conduct a pre-assessment or an assessment process in person, and then travel back with that huge chunk of answer sheets and spend a few days going through each of those answer sheets and making sure that you have identified the right shortlist. And many of you today who run university programs, you would not be able to relate to any of the story that I just described, because we have the privilege of some of the best technologies at our disposal to help us reinvent some of our strategies. My good friend Rakesh, who is head of sales for Hackerrank, has played a significant role to help us elevate that experience both for our stakeholders in the organization as well as for the students. I'll spend some time later on that topic. But leveraging technology is another key factor to help us re-engineer. We also should focus on creating a lasting impression at the campuses because as I said, every year students are introduced to a new set of technology and new set of brands. And if we have to stand out, if our company has to be a standout brand or has to be a preferred organization for the student community, we need to focus on creating long-term lasting impressions and not a stopgap arrangement of just hiring from these campuses. And last but not the least, what really contributes to creating to building a better brand at campuses or hiring the best talent for tech roles is about the experience we offer to our students. It's just not about hiring or the day of the hiring. It's also about what really happens after we make the offers. As you all know, most campuses we wrap up the hiring program well ahead of their onboarding date. So there is a huge gap of at least 6 to 7 months before we actually see them come on board. And as many of you can relate to it, a lot can happen between the time we make an offer till the time we onboard these students. So we need to invest significantly on providing a great post-offer engagement as well as a great onboarding experience. So that's some of the aspects that I would call out. I'm sure each one of you would have your own views. There is absolutely no specific or a set answer to this question. We will have to kind of look at programs or look at strategy that is relevant to our own organization. But in a very generic perspective, these are some of the key aspects that I would actually focus on re-engineering tech recruiting at campuses. So let's actually spend some time and go a little deeper on what are these aspects really translate to. The next on the agenda is how do we maximize the efficiency and quality of hires? Again, this space has also evolved significantly over time, and unfortunately, I've been in this industry for just 14 or 15 years. But if I speak to some of the veterans who've been in this space long before, it's nowhere close to what it is today or how it is done today. Today, almost every organization rely on technology. And pretty much end-to-end campus recruitment can be delivered through an online experience. The digitization of assessment process, leveraging social media like Facebook and LinkedIn or Twitter, or all these medium helps us create a better brand at the universities without having to be there. Look at the amount of time this is helping us save. If I have to quote an example, I've been using Hackerrank almost since 2010. And this has been a game changer for us. For example, as I quoted an example earlier of the amount of travel required for us to travel to campuses for assessment, this is completely taken off the process these days. I'm not even realizing how much time I have saved because of not having a manual assessment process. Thanks to Hackerrank, we are able to save a few hundred hours every year and give it back to our engineers and our university program specialists to come up with a lot more strategic impact for the organization. And it's just not Hackerrank. There are many other portals for every stage of the hiring. I think having the right balance of technology and personal experience goes a long way in providing a more efficient, approach in bringing in quality hires to the candidates. I would not say having 100% dependency is the best way to go forward, but the right way is to leverage technology in the right way to provide a better experience to our stakeholders. So while we are focused on leveraging technologies, we are also obliged to or we also have a responsibility to focus on some of the more strategic initiatives. Now, that's where I was talking about having the right balance between technology and experience. So while we leverage technology to provide an efficient hiring model, we can invest our time and provide this time to our university hiring team to provide more of a strategic, partnership with the universities. I have listed a few, aspects that really goes a long way in helping us build a strong engagement program. Time and again, you have seen organizations investing in infrastructure support for universities. Almost every IIT has an ongoing, monetary support from many top organizations for the right reasons. There are organizations which are investing in setting up of labs, providing free licensed hardware. A good example that I can quote here is, Adobe. One of the Adobe solutions is Adobe Sign, which is being used for electronic signature of documents. And we are tapping into universities to provide them with the free access to this software where they can use it for their regular day-to-day paperwork. The entire PDF Acrobat is offered free of cost to the student communities. So some of these things help us build a brand for ourselves, but also also connect with the student community on a technology perspective. If students can see us, see some innovative products and try it out, they can also relate themselves to be part of these organizations because they can connect the technology aspect of working in an organization which is focused on latest technologies. We also talk about sponsored events. This also has gone through a bit of an evolution. Earlier, you used to have this sponsorship for large cultural events, but today you see a lot of organizations focused on the target audience. For example, Adobe is focused on computer science students, so we run a lot of hackathons. We run a lot of codathons in partnership with Hackerrank, which is specifically targeted to the technology talent. I will come back to you why it is important for us to speak the right language at the campus. Some of these events are very specific to the organizations, but at a very high level, you may have variations of these aspects, but pretty much every organization is focused on some of these aspects. We also can provide sponsored research and scholarship. We invite professors from universities to be part of our engineering teams to understand some of the latest technologies which they can go back and teach the students. Similarly, we have internship programs where we provide opportunities for students to be part of real-time projects for a couple of months, which also provides us a platform to brand our organization for a good 2 months. And imagine these interns who had a good experience of internship going back to the universities and other communities and branding your organization to a much larger population. It's a cascading effect that you have when you have these interns. Guest lectures and company visits are very common. So we have a mandate that every quarter we invite at least one of the professors from the universities to come in and provide a tech talk. Similarly, we constantly invite students from other universities to be part of our community by visiting our campuses, by having an opportunity to interact with some of the senior leaders. We also play a role in helping some of the universities design their curriculum. For example, Microsoft or Amazon, constantly influence some of the trending topics to be part of the curriculum, which is actually a welcome sign because although most of the students come with some of the basic skills, it's also important for them to be up level to some of the fastest changing technologies in the industry. And having a role in helping design the curriculum helps us bridge that gap to some extent. If you're an organization who's looking to invest in campuses on a long term, having campus ambassadors is a great idea. Campus ambassadors are your representative of your organization at the campuses. You can actually share a lot of insights, share a lot of collaterals when you go back to the campuses, and they can brand your organization at their universities. So these are some of the cool initiatives that you can actually run as part of your organization. You'll be surprised. Again, leveraging technology, some of these can be very cost effective. Now, not every organization will have a large budget, but you can definitely have a variation to some of these things. And many of these events are sometimes free of cost. If you offer, variations of these initiatives, you can run some of these programs at a minimal cost. So that's about branding and at the universities. Now, while we are talking about re-engineering tech hiring at campuses, it also translates to how are we resonating that with the era of millennials. And if you compare to students a few years back who will probably be happy with one offer, today every top student at the top universities will be sitting on at least 3 or 4 offers. and yet you're not sure if they would actually take up any of these offers because they might eventually go and do a master's or do a startup on their own. So how do you really connect, to the era of the millennials? And also because of the access to information and social media, the gap between what the students know about the organizations and from earlier years to today is significantly different. I can Google about Adobe, I can Google about Google or Amazon and get to know various aspects of being part of the organizations. So we also need to evolve and we also need to reinvent ourselves in how we are communicating back to the students, right? It's just not about the compensation that drives a student today for offers. It's also about it's also about the culture of the organization. It's about what kind of long-term, investment or long-term support an organization can offer to an individual that goes into a decision. Finding a job today for some of the top 50 schools in India is not a big deal, but it's finding the right job is very important. So it's very important to kind of have a culture around, providing, good care, support, and career management programs when you are also looking to hire the best talent from the universities. Another big aspect that actually plays a role is about being honest in what you offer as an information. As many of you know, there was a bit of a disruption a couple of years back when some of the organizations failed to honor some of the offers they extended or some of the benefits they promised as part of the offer. So it's very important that you provide honest information. Students can see through the difference between a base package versus a bonus versus a value attested to free food provided in the organization. So you can inflate an offer, but if you break it down, students today are smart enough to know what really translates to actual compensation and what is an inflated compensation. So let's be honest about what we do at the campus, because there is multiple forums or multiple platforms for these students to validate some of this information. Merit over loyalty, that is actually taking precedence. It's very important that the millennials are offered some of the best technologies to work with. Practically, it's very hard because not every organization can continuously provide a new work to not just the new college grads or even for any other employees, but it's important to provide a robust plan in how they are being inducted into the organization and what kind of projects they will be part of. Right? Have a very strong online presence. As I said earlier, the gap is very, very small these days in between the universities and the organizations. So having a very strong online presence, sharing a lot of information, having the leaders build a very strong profile on LinkedIn, sharing insights, writing about what we do in the organization goes a long way in creating a lasting impression in the student community. So some of these play a significant role when you're talking about the millennials who will be interested in signing up for a job in your organization. Let me spend a few minutes here. I'm talking about, it's just not about making an offer at the universities, but it's also about how do we ensure there is a strong engagement even after the offer is made till the person is brought on board. Post offer engagement plays a significant role. Again, there is a lot of technologies, social media, where you can build engagement programs. We have a few apps that has been built by for the new college grads, where they can constantly get updated of the teams and of some of the new launches, new innovations that an organization is launching to the market. Automation of onboarding through a single platform. Even before we onboard the students, providing them with the relevant information on what is required for them to take up a professional role will also go a long way in providing a great experience. We use webinars to provide them a glimpse of what's really trending in the organization. So it kind of keeps them excited and look forward to being a part of a brand, because we are constantly engaged after the offer is made. That is the time when a lot of students can get disengaged, and it's those few organizations who can play that, who can leverage that gap or the vacuum to continuously stay engaged, will help them convert a lot of these offers to accepts. Onboarding also plays a significant role in retaining some of this talent. If you look at the attrition data for many organizations, it's the talent pool between 0 to 2 years who tend to leave the organization more often than the experienced folks, because more or less they always get the stick of not having to work in a great project, or having not having a seamless and a great onboarding experience. So having, investing sufficient time in onboarding goes a long way in retaining this talent of the long term. So that's about the candidate experience outside of a university hiring. What is the future of university hiring looking like? While we are all focused on reinventing, if you can see a comparison here, the placement season, which is probably the most hated word or hated phrase for many of the organizations, which is actually pretty skewed, because today universities decide who has to be joining which organization, which is very different to what you see in a global platform. For example, US or other countries, there is no concept of a day status. We are a global organization and we have a peer group who focus on similar programs. They are surprised to hear of the day status in India. I think over time the technologies will play a significant role to eliminate that aspect. The future of university hiring is to have a direct relationship with the student community, rather than going through placement departments. Engagement plays a significant role even today, but engagement in the future is more to do with starting early on. Google, for example, has started investing in creating an engagement as early as +1 or +2 phase of the student career, because that's where you start building, being an influencer in people's mind on what is the best brand to be part of. And the engagement need not start in the final year. It can start as early as first year. And of course, customizing university programs is also very important. While I have highlighted some of these aspects, every organization has their own agenda, and it's important that you customize some of these programs. And one size doesn't fit for all universities either. You need to identify universities which has a preference or a certain set of engagement versus other universities. Assessment process also is evolving significantly. I think Hackerrank and many similar platforms are available for us to provide a better experience in reinventing our strategy with university hiring and programs. So I guess I kind of ran overshot on my time. But this is pretty much the end of what I wanted to share today. I'll be happy to take any questions if there is any.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad, for the great insights. We have Mr. Rakesh, Director of Sales, India and APAC, Hackerrank, here to speak a few words before we take up the questions. Meanwhile, you can provide your feedback in the survey link provided in the chat section, because your input matters.
Thank you, Saloni. Thank you, Prasad, the amazing and insightful presentation. Totally appreciate you putting up all the stats and walking the audience through this amazing presentation. I couldn't help but kind of join the dots when you were walking through, how in your Google days, there used to be like question papers, and I'm sure a lot of them in the audience, who've probably been through that process, would probably resonate with them as well. And, interestingly, it's probably around the same time, that we were also probably thinking of on the same lines, where Hari and Vivek went through the similar process when they were in college, the co-founders of Hackerrank. And mentioned when the space was, evolving significantly, this couldn't have been left behind. And every solution comes out of a certain problem. And that's exactly how Hackerrank evolved too, in terms of automating and digitizing the entire assessment space, moving on from pen and paper assessments to kind of digitizing and automating it to kind of make sure it's faster and smoother. Interestingly, I was also making a note of one particular stat that you mentioned, where, the Zeno stats that you presented, where there were about 8 MNCs to about 1,200 plus today. I think the spin over there also is the fact that, today, I think in those 1,200, what has significantly changed is a lot more companies belonging to different spaces are actually vying for the same talent. Typically, every company today is becoming a software company. Companies from the retail domain, hospitals, pharmacies, governments, automobile sector, manufacturing sector, pretty much everyone's vying for the same talent. And I think that's where the fight for the technical talent and in specific, grabbing college students becomes that much more difficult. And, everything aligns with what you said with respect to engagement, keeping them on their toes, etc. Everything becomes important, and that's where a place like Hackerrank becomes all the more important to kind of become a part of your strategy. I think what the other important aspect that I kind of made note from the presentation, which could probably resonate with everyone in the audience, where you significantly mentioned the amount of hundreds of hours saved, for your hiring managers. I think that's the key element here. I think that's significant value that a platform like Hackerrank would like to bring into every company, is because you'd like your hiring managers to do what they do best, and which is to code, and not necessarily spend a lot of time interviewing candidates. And I think that's where a platform like Hackerrank would also give a lot of kind of bonus points between business and recruiting to ensure that they work well together as a well-oiled machinery, where they are happy about the fact that the recruiting function is giving them a lot more better candidates who are being pre-screened and assessed rather than just the resume. I think overall, Prasad, thank you so much for kind of articulating it so well. It kind of also fits in very clearly with the Hackerrank vision of create, power, and predict. Where we want to create a standard for developers. We want to power tech recruiting in an unbiased manner, and we want to be in a place where we can predict a job fit by matching every developer to the right job. And it's companies like Adobe who leverage Hackerrank, give us such data points to make sure that we're also marching towards our vision. Overall, I'd like to thank you, Prasad, and thank you, People Matters, for giving us this platform together to kind of take our audience through this particular presentation. Thank you to the both of you.
Thanks, Rakesh.
Thank you, Mr. Rakesh and Mr. Prasad. We will now move to the questions from our listeners. So we have a question coming up by Sanjukta, and she says that could you share which are the engagement programs that really help building the lasting impressions?
So if you have noticed one of the slides, I spoke about branding at universities. There are various aspects, right? For example, if I had to quote about Adobe, for last 3 years, we have campus ambassadors at the universities. So we typically pick somebody who is in their second year, who don't necessarily qualify to take up a full-time job, be our campus ambassadors. And we continuously keep providing them with information on, what is happening at Adobe, what are some of the latest innovations that is going out to the market. Since we are an enterprise company and we are not a, consumer-facing company like Google or Facebook, we need to do a more aggressive branding of our technology. And unless students get to know what kind of work is happening in your organization, there's no way they can connect to your brand. So we leverage campus ambassadors to provide a lot of insights to what's trending in Adobe and what is the focus areas, the kind of work we are doing on data sciences or artificial intelligence, which is actually are at the forefront of some of the innovative stuff we are doing in the organization. Internship is another important forum where it will help you build a long-term engagement with the universities, and it also to a large extent helps us negate the impact we have to go through because of the day status. Naturally, companies which offer higher compensation are preferred over companies with a lesser compensation. When every year for large brand like Adobe or Microsoft, we cannot be skewing on comp for new hires just because we want to be on day zero. So we actually invest on internship because apart from compensation, students also look forward to the kind of work that they will get to do when they are part of the organization as a full-time employee. And internship is the best way to provide a window for these students to experience that kind of work without having to have a full-time role. Apart from that, the other engagements we constantly do, we leverage social media like Facebook. We run a lot of spot contests to kind of give a preview of what's trending in the organization. We invite a professor from at least 3 or 4 different universities every year to be part of the research team and take up a small time research project in some of the trending topics like NLP or AI or data sciences, which they can go back and talk to their students about your brand. So these are some of the top engagement programs that we have at the universities.
Thank you. I'm sure these engagement programs would surely give that kind of lasting impression. So we have another question by Niket, and he addresses to Prasad, saying like, what do you think, based on your experience, is key driving factor on campus? Is it the role or is it the salary?
My heart says role, but my mind says salary. But I would say it's a right balance of role and compensation. Let me elaborate more on that. And I think compared to few years back, today the options are a lot more for for a student who is graduating from a good school, a reasonably good school in India. If I would say the top 100 schools in India, because apart from a few top brands, there are plenty of opportunities for these students to always take up a job. So it's about finding the right job. So that's where the role plays a very important role. And practically speaking, organizations cannot really offer the best of the work for new college grads because there are definitely a lot more senior folks in the organization who would be preferred. But having something charted out for new college grads, if that is that's a priority for an organization, it's important for the organization to carve out something niche for the student communities to be part of, because this is a community which can easily be swayed by other opportunities even after just 2 months into the organizations. There is a tendency for these individuals to leave the job and take up something else. So role does play a significant role, because today a lot of organizations does offer fairly good compensation.
That was a great answer, Prasad. So another question we'll take, though we have a time constraint, so we'll take one more question. So the question is from Barkha Nagar, and she asked how the students can protect themselves from fake advertising of the organizations. And I mean, she means that how they can select a better organization.
I'm actually interpreting this question as how do we ensure there is honest information shared with the students? I guess that's the question. This again attributes to the engagement that we need to focus on, and not just hiring. Many organizations today look at universities as a way to hire cheap talent, but there are organizations which are reinventing and looking them as a strategic investment. So having a very strong engagement model eliminates the risk of having negative advertising or negative branding for a particular organization. If my campus ambassadors are there around the year, I can ensure that there is a positive branding of my my organization, and the student community is aware that there are individuals who will be able to address some of their questions related to a particular organization. Not having any presence at the campuses beyond hiring will give way to a lot of these fake advertising or negative branding of the company. I don't know if I got the answer right or if I got the question right, but let me know if you want me to elaborate on this question more.
I think this is the only question, and you answered it very, very perfect way. I think we should now we should stop the questions here, and you can take that offline. So, and with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webinar. We have many more questions coming in, which I would request the speaker to take offline. Once again, we thank today's webinar partner, Hackerrank. Also, a gentle reminder to give your feedback in the survey link we have provided in the chat section in order to help us improve. Our special thanks to our speaker, Mr. Prasad and Mr. Rakesh, for this webinar and invaluable information that they have shared with us today. I would also like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for participating in today's presentation. Stay tuned for many more such exciting sessions. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Saloni. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Saloni. Yes, sir.